Biggest bust in fantasy. C.J. Stroud was drafted as the QB5. He somehow finished QB27. Anthony Richardson, QB6 by ADP, QB20 in points per game. Travis Etienne Jr., top 10 running back by ADP, barely finished as a top 40 running back in points per game. Tyreek Hill was the number 1 wide receiver by ADP and finished as wide receiver 29 in points per game. Marvin Harrison Jr., wide receiver 9 in ADP. He finished as wide receiver 40 in points per game. Some honorable mentions. Christian McCaffrey, who just never really seemed to be healthy. Breece Hall, Deebo Samuel, Dalton Kincaid, Kyle Pitts, and Zamir White.
Yeah. And much like MVP or breakout or value pick, like bust is also a controversial category in that there's a lot of different ways you can define it. Is it the guy that went the highest that performed the worst? Should injuries be allowed to count as part of a bust, or is it just somebody that just underperformed expectations? Relative, like if you drafted a guy number 1 overall and he finished like as a mid-pack guy, like it's not great, but he didn't kill you. Whereas if you drafted somebody in the 4th round and they did nothing at all, like Zamir White was going in between the 4th and 6th rounds for some people. He was on the preseason hate list, by the way. Zamir White's on you guys.
Always wild
but people did draft him.
Yeah.
People were running back hungry, and he was going in that. I saw him go as high as the 4th, and often in that the 6th round in that area. So bust is sort of a controversial category, but Connor, how would you rate this?
I think Tyreek Hill is the runaway winner for this one. And I understand there's a lot of stuff out there that he got hurt in a joint practice and it lingered throughout the year and all that. But when Tua got hurt, Tyreek was unplayable. He really wasn't the game changer that we expected him to be when Tua was healthy. You're talking about somebody that was drafted as the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy football, barely sneaking into the top 30 in points per game. It was just a very disappointing year for Tyreek Hill that doesn't stand up anywhere close to the rest of the field.
Did he score fewer fantasy points than Jonnu Smith? Must have been neck and neck, which is absolutely insane.
Tyreek had a couple 100-yard games to end the season, so he might have
Jonnu Smith
got
had
him
more
at
touchdowns.
the end.
Yeah, for sure.
And the yardage was pretty close, which is just completely insane
Yeah.
that Tyreek Hill was in the same tier as Jonnu Smith.
Yeah, I mean, look, just to give you some other context here, I mean, I do think Richardson got benched for Joe Flacco. I mean, this is somebody that was pitched to me as a ride or die candidate. This is somebody that I saw some people had him as a top.
Who pitched to me as a ride or die candidate? Who would do such a thing?
I'm not going to throw anyone under the bus, but he was also I saw some people had him as high as QB3 as well. I mean, you mentioned McCaffrey, like the injuries, but like even the few games that McCaffrey was healthy. He didn't score a touchdown.
Right.
Like, this is a guy that, like, it was a joke about how, it got to be like minus 300 on DraftKings, like, anytime touchdown for McCaffrey because he was just so automatic. And yet he didn't score a touchdown in the handful of games that he was actually healthy this year. That's during Marvin Harrison Jr. as well, when you think about, like, the fact that the Cardinals, listen, Kyler Murray did not have the year we all hoped he would. Certainly, he more died than ride. For me this year, I've got to bounce back next year with that pick. But for as much talent as he has and as much success as all the rookie wide receivers had this year, shocking how bad Marvin Harrison Jr. was, given the amount of looks he got in that offense.
Very disappointing season for MHJ, overshadowed by all the other rookie receivers. Producer Stephen tells me that Jonnu Smith did have 4 more points than Tyreek Hill this season, which is completely insane. One other one in the honorable mentions, and interested for your thoughts here, Connor, looking forward on Breece Hall, who just never got going for him. It was a strange season in terms of his usage, in terms of his
He was often
health.
drafted as the second best running back.
Yeah, we were talking on CMC, Breece Hall, and Bijan, and people were weighing those 3 guys up. And I will say, I thought at the end of the season, I thought against Buffalo, he looked healthier and more spry than he had in a long time.
Another guy that was hurt during OTAs, a little banged up during training camp, and never looked like himself during the season, but it was way too inconsistent.
I think he'll bounce back next year.
I would actually put Debo on here instead of the 2 quarterbacks. He had a rough go this year.
All right, so let's take a look at the fan vote before we get to the official winner.
Tyreek Hill
is
40%.
Yeah,
wow.
a
landslide.
Yeah, big fan vote.
Yeah,
I'm actually surprised Stroud only got 2% because taking his QB5 and being literally unplayable in fantasy.
He finished his QB 27.
I mean, he wasn't
CJ Stroud was
flex
QB5, right? And he finished his QB 27. Again, he was also on the hate list. CJ Stroud was, but I didn't think he'd finish outside the top 25. As well. Just kind of a shock there. All right, the Peacocky goes to. That's right, Peacocky. You can fly.
This
fly.
is a big one.
You can fly, Peacocky. Biggest bust. Biggest bust. All right, Jay, that's clearly you.
Somebody got to do it.
All right, biggest bust. I think I know who this is going to be. This should be a Heath Ledger, Best Supporting Actor, Dark Knight type situation for Tyreek Hill, I would have thought. And it is Tyreek Hill who is the biggest bust of the 2024
wide
season.
receiver,
Congratulations,
finishes wide receiver 29 in points per game basis. Had only 4 weeks where he finished as a top 12 wide receiver. 7 different weeks he was outside the top 50. Fewer points per game than Josh Downs, Adam Thielen, Juwan Jennings, Jacoby Myers. And the biggest issue with Tyreek Hill is you never felt like you could bench him. At least with C.J. Stroud, like, you quickly figured out, like, all right, I got to find somebody else. Yep. Right? A lot of these other guys, you felt like, okay, I got to move on. CMC, at least, there were a lot of weeks where you knew, like, he's not starting from this week. Tyreek Hill, you always felt like you had to start him, and yet the production never came, and if it did come, it was inconsistent and weird when it came. Like, Tyler Huntley against Cleveland, and suddenly Tyreek Hill has a good game. Like, that was the issue with Tyreek Hill, is you felt like you always had to start him, and just the production was never there. And again, there were so many other wide receivers that you could have had instead of Tyreek Hill. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and Rotoworld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Roto-World fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.